Hello, everyone. I already see some of you in the chat, and there are friendly faces there, people I know. So thank you for joining me. We are here to celebrate 10,000 followers on the Steady Coach channel, which is amazing. And to celebrate the occasion, we are having crazy thunderstorms here right now. So I want to apologize in advance if my internet goes out, if there are delays. I promise I will come back. If I need to, I will hop onto my phone to do this recording. But I'm sorry in advance. We're celebrating Florida style. So I see Sherry here. I see Lynn. I see Mamen, Margie, Daniel, Gabriella, Sherry, Brock. Hello. Hello. I know so many of you, either from my membership community, and Marie is here. Hello, everyone. I I was telling folks in my membership community like maybe just a few days ago that these public live Q&As always freak me out, which is really totally illogical because obviously I mean, I'm constantly putting stuff on YouTube. I'm constantly talking into cameras, but there's something about being in public on YouTube live that's like so I have some activation in my system right now. We'll work on that all together. So hi, Katie, Cassie, Joella, Charlotte, Mandy. Hi, Mandy. It's good to see your name here. I can imagine your face, not seeing your face, but seeing your name. Michelle, Anna, hello. Hello, Leanne. Hello. And Oog, hello, whose name I'm pronouncing not too terribly now. So good to see all of you. Thank you, Mom. Mom is coaching me to breathe deeply. Thank you, Mom. I could use that advice right now. Again, I'm so excited to celebrate with all of you. There were so many questions asked in advance. I am not going to get to all of them today. I'm planning to go for about an hour and a half today. As always, as my members know, you can hop on and off anytime you'd like. I will not know if you need to leave. I won't know that you've left, but you can, of course, say hello in the chat, say goodbye in the chat, comment in the chat, uh, support each other in the chat, talk to each other in the chat, put cool emojis in the chat, and I will totally pull questions from the chat as well as I'm going through this. But again, since I'll be focusing on some of the questions that were asked in advance, I may not see your question right away. So I see so many more of you here. Oh my gosh. I see Ariane. I see Elsa, Alina. I see Gary, Mindy, Natalie, Janice, William. I see Jane Marie. I see Gwen. Hello. Thank you. Thank you, all of you. I promise I'm not going to take too long saying this, but I am overwhelmed when honestly, if I were a better marketing person, I probably would have planned in advance to reach 10,000 followers and would have had something kind of on the board to just post and say, but it kind of took me by surprise. And then I woke up and there it was, and there were 10,000 followers. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, that just happened. And that means that I'm actually reaching people. So I just want to tell you, in case you're wondering what kind of work I'm doing right now and what kind of impact I'm trying to make, I think that you deserve to know because all of you have been so supportive and so much a part of that process. So, as you guys have gathered, obviously the channel has grown, my membership community has grown, my practice working with clients has grown. My own practice, I have taken on 3 new coaches. So we have 3 new coaches working with me now. They are not ready to take on clients from the general public right now. They're just helping my coaching group members right now. But I'm hoping that eventually we'll be able to bring anyone in for an appointment if you need an appointment, at least a single time appointment to just kind of point you in the right direction. So please stay tuned for announcements about that. I'll be putting that in my newsletter. So if you're not signed up for my newsletter, please sign up for that. You can go to thesteadycoach.com and scroll down, and there's a little newsletter sign up at the bottom. And let's see what else I have. So again, I have not spoken about this very much publicly, but I have been very quietly and privately meeting with neurologists and ENTs and other medical providers, including audiologists, who contact me after hearing about my channel or to whom I'm referred from my existing clients or community members. And I'm having conversations with them at least once a week. I'm having a conversation with a new person who sees many of you in on your local turf to try to educate people about neural circuit dizziness, how to help people with neural circuit dizziness, what it means, what it is, what it isn't. So I'm really trying to get that message out there, not just through my YouTube channel. I am currently on the Vestibular Disorders Association board of directors, also to try to change the narrative that they currently are advocating about neural circuit dizziness and neural circuit disorders. The Vestibular Disorders Association does a fantastic job with medical causes of dizziness, but they are not as good at communicating about things like neural circuit dizziness. And again, that's something I'm actively working to change. In July, I'm giving a talk to SERPA, which is the Stress Illness Recovery Practitioners Association in the UK. So they're a whole network of providers who work with people with chronic medically unexplained pain, dizziness, and other symptoms like IBS, fibromyalgia, etc. So I'll be educating them about neural circuit dizziness. And I'm, yeah, I think that about covers it. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. That's what I've been up to. Wow, I summarized that really quickly. It's been a lot, guys, but I'm really trying, not just through my YouTube channel, to try to get the message out to not just people who need this help directly, but people who are helping people like you so that you can get the help, and other people who come down with this kind of disorder can get the help that they need quickly, get the correct information quickly. They don't have to go to YouTube. Again, every time I see a comment where someone says, I had to go to YouTube to find you after suffering for 9 months, it breaks my heart. And I mean, I'm happy that they're here. I'm happy they're getting the right answers, and that's wonderful. But why are they not getting this information 6 months ago? Like, why are they not, why do they have to go to YouTube to get information about how to get better? I want this to come from a local provider. I want an ENT or a neurologist to at least have this kind of stuff on their radar and know about the resources. So I I'm going to make a big ask of all of you. If you have a good relationship with your physios, with your ENTs, with your neurologists, with anyone else who you've seen who's at least in any way receptive to um, an alternative viewpoint on this, please send them my stuff. I will be happy to talk to them. They can take the course for free, of course. I have handouts that I can give them. I have resources I can give them. I can help them make a difference for other people so that they don't have to go through what you went through. So please help me advocate. Let's all take this into our hands and advocate for other people who are going to come down with PPPD, MDDS, vestibular migraine in the future so that they get the information quickly. Yeah. Okay. So, all that being said, there's my pitch for advocacy and all the things that I've been working on. And I'm going to get into the questions now. And throughout answering the questions, I'm sure I'm going to pepper in some other things that I've been working on that I have just forgotten about. So, yeah. Um, okay. This is so again, I'm going to pull a question here in the chat just to kick things off. And then I'm going to again be pulling back and forth between the chat and some questions that were asked in advance. So Michelle has a question here that I think is so important to answer. So that's why I'm jumping into this one right away. Michelle's having a really hard time. And Michelle, you are in good company here. You are not alone. I know it's saying I'm having a really hard time is the understatement of the century. I understand. So she says, I want to work with you or another therapist that knows what I'm going through, but can never afford them because they don't take insurance. What do I do? So I have mentioned before on my channel that there are therapists and people like me, practitioners who work with people with chronic medically unexplained conditions. In my free course, I have links to some of those practices that specialize in these kinds of disorders. But as Michelle is pointing out here, yes, those types of practices tend to be quite specialized and often are only private pay. So someone who needs to use insurance or who has financial limitations is not going to be able to access them. So I'm going to give you some resources here. And Michelle, uh, some of these resources are going to apply primarily to people in the US, Canada, and the UK. If you are located somewhere else in the world, we are this is something that we are working on that I'm very passionate about. We don't have good directories for these kinds of practitioners in other countries. So, first of all, I'm going to give you guys some names. And Michelle's saying she's there in Arizona, so that's good. Okay. So, one place to look for a provider is PPD Association. surpa.org. I'm putting that in the chat. So if you are unable to see the chat, if you're watching a replay or you're not signed in, it's PPD association.org. There's a directory of practitioners there. Some of them may take insurance, some of them may not. It is a dynamic process. So some people may or some people may not. I mentioned SIRPA. I'm going to post their link in the chat as well. SIRPA, SIRP. Ooh, I can't type today. My membership community knows this, that I have trouble typing sometimes. Okay, because it's dark in here, especially with the storm going on outside. So SIRPA.org, SIRPA.org. So that's for those of you outside of the United States. They serve primarily the UK and Europe. Again, your ability to access them via insurance is going to vary. But let's just say that none of those people take your insurance or you're not able to access them. Brock is mentioning here, and I'm going to pull his little comment up on the screen. So he says, my place has well qualified interns. I only pay $25 per session. So you don't, I know you really want to be with someone who understands what you're going through, but this is why I have this YouTube channel. And this is why I have the membership community, because they're free or very low cost. And you can get the information you need to connect the dots, even if you're working with a general therapist. There are types of therapy that are more helpful than others. And I'm going to get to that in a second, Michelle. But people like Brock, who's mentioning it right here, and many of the people in my membership community have just gone to a local therapist who takes that person's insurance. They've made the connection between the dizziness and the things they're working on in therapy by themselves with the help of the membership community or with the YouTube videos, and they've been able to get better. Brock actually is fully recovered, and we've already recorded a recovery story. It's not out here yet, but it will be soon. So you'll be able to hear his story coming up soon. But as I said, Michelle, there are some types of therapy that are more effective than others. And in general, for chronic dizziness, for medically unexplained chronic dizziness or pain, because I know some of my audience, dizziness is not your primary issue. You also have chronic pain, or you have neck issues, or you have post-concussion syndrome. So for anyone with medically unexplained chronic symptoms, you're going to do better with a therapist who is an experiential type therapist. So experiential means you're not just doing CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy and changing your thoughts about your symptoms. That's a really big part of what we do here on this channel. I am not at all saying CBT is not helpful. It is helpful, super helpful. But what I see very frequently is that people can change their thoughts around their symptoms, but their bodies are still in a state of alarm because they have a lot of other stuff that's causing their bodies to go into a state of alarm. That's not just faulty thought processes. Okay. And a therapist who's not going to just talk to you and help you vent about your problems and think through your thoughts, but actually is going to help you get into your body and work on some of the emotional components of dizziness. And when I say emotional components of dizziness, I don't mean your emotions about the dizziness. I mean your emotions about things that have nothing to do with the dizziness that are leading your body to be in a state of fight or flight. Those types of therapists are going to be more helpful. So my again, these are just recommendations, of course, based on my own experience, but internal family systems is a type of therapy that I advocate for a lot. It's called IFS. So I put that in the chat. AEDP, I'm not going to put the full name, but AEDP, if you Google this, accelerated experiential dynamic psychotherapy. So ISTDP, intensive short-term dynamic psychotherapy. I'm putting all this in the chat, guys, by the way. So I'm trying to speak slowly enough that those of you who can't see the chat will be able to hear what I'm saying, but please rewind if you needed to hear me say that again. So all of those types of therapy are experiential. And then there are some therapists who use a method called somatic experiencing that can be helpful. It's not something that I'm personally trained in. And I find that sometimes those therapists are so much in the body that they're not always making the connection to the mind. So again, it totally depends on the therapist, but that is also another type of experiential therapy that can be very helpful. And of course, there's also EAET, emotional awareness and expression therapy, which is very specifically for chronic dizziness and pain. So anyone in those two directories I linked to, the PPD Association or SERPA, those types of therapists have that kind of training. So Michelle, lots of options for you. And I just want to reassure you, as Mamen posted just a few moments ago, Mamen says the membership community is so helpful. It's game changing for me with our condition. Thank you, Mamen. I love you so much. um, but you really don't need to spend a ton of money or go to a specialized therapist for this, as long as you can make the connection for yourself between what you're doing and what you're trying to accomplish for neural circuit dizziness purposes. Yeah, you're so welcome, Michelle. You are so welcome. Okay. All right. So I'm going to pull up some questions that were asked in advance because I promised I would. So, this is a great question. So, Mary's question, Mary wanted to know, can I get better if I've had this for 13 years? So, Mary very rightly pointed out that many of the recovery stories here are from people who've had it for a relatively short period of time. Although, gosh, I really even hate saying that because short implies that it didn't feel like 20 years for the person going through it. I mean, even 3 months of this stuff is enough for a lifetime. But yeah, I want to be I'm so glad you asked this question, Mary, because I'm so happy to say that first of all, I'm about to have a video about this exact question. So there's going to be a video. It's probably gonna be a few weeks before this one's out, and when I say a few weeks, probably more like a month, or longer, but the video is gonna be about the factors that speed people's recoveries up and slow people's recoveries down, and the length of time is not one of those factors. I do not care how long you've had it. I have seen the people with the longest period of symptoms have the fastest recoveries. It is not one of the factors that I care about when someone comes in. Now, of course, I care about it because I care about you, and I to have this suffering for 13 years is unconscionable. So I don't mean to say I don't care about that, but it is, as far as I'm concerned, has nothing to do with how quickly you can recover. The reason that you're hearing success stories from people who've had it for a relatively short period of time is that I started my YouTube channel about 2 years ago. So the viewers on my channel have been with me for about 2 years. So most of the people who I'm interviewing now who recovered with the help of my channel have had it for 2 years or less time than that. So I I I know I have some interviews kind of in the pipeline from people who've taken longer, or who not just taken longer, or who've had it for much longer. But keep in mind that um, that's not represented as much here on my channel. My channel is going to be skewed toward people who recover after a shorter period of time because I haven't been around for that long. So yeah, it can be healed and cured. As Gwen is saying here, I believe it can be healed and cured. I 100% agree with you, Gwen. And I seriously, I don't want to give any identifying information, but I have had clients on my roster who've had it for more than 3 decades who made some of the fastest recoveries I've ever seen. The factors that affect recovery, length of time is not one of them. Now, that's not to say that length of time isn't going to affect how you're going to approach it, because sometimes there's a grieving process that's very intense when you have had it for a long time and then you realize you can recover and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I just had it for 13 years and my life, I've lost so much of my life." And that I think is something that either a good therapist or some good journaling can really help you with. So I think that's going to have to be part of the process for you if you've had it for a longer length of time. But as far as I'm concerned, zero concerns that you can make a full recovery. Zero concern. Yeah. And that's a great question. So, kind of on this topic, Leon's asking, and Leon is one of our community members. Woo! Leon asks, does vestibular damage affect length of time to heal? So, Leon, I'm going to refer you to this video about my friend Katie, who gave me permission to share um, this story from you with you guys. So here's a link to a video you can watch. If you don't see the chat, if you search my channel for "Can I recover from chronic dizziness if I have ear damage or weakness?" Okay. That video shows a person who had a major tumor and lost complete severing of the vestibular nerve. So she has no function on one side. And in that in that particular case, she has zero dizziness. So the brain's capable of compensating for this stuff. I don't think vestibular damage has anything to do with recovery times. But sometimes having had vestibular damage means you had a really scary initial vestibular event, and that has to be worked through. So I think that can be a factor for some people. But again, based on my experience clinically before I started doing this work and what I see nowadays, there doesn't seem to be a relationship between the amount of damage someone has and the number of symptoms that person has. So I don't think that's a limiting factor either. Okay, so coming back to this comment, this question. Okay, so I've got a question here from Polo Espino 4121. So I don't know the name, but hello. I don't know if you're here live, but this is a great question and one I thought was really helpful. It could be helpful for all of you. So, can a physical injury like whiplash develop into neural circuit dizziness? So, 100% yes. So I'm mentioning the whiplash because, again, I know many of you have had vestibular specific injuries or vestibular onset. And by the way, about half of you don't. So if you're like, I don't know if I fit in here because I never actually had any kind of physical issue at all, and here I am with dizziness, you totally belong here. Not most, but a good proportion of the people here didn't have an initial injury, but many people did. So what you're asking here, Polo, is absolutely this is how PPPD or persistent postural perceptual disorder develops after, say, a unilateral weakness or a labyrinthitis or neuritis event. So initially, something attacking your inner ear, for example, is going to cause dizziness. It's physical dizziness because your brain is looking for information from that ear. It's not getting it the way that it was before. It's really confused about what's going on, and your brain has to try to reorganize its expectations or its predictions depending on how much damage was done. And that process takes time. And while that's happening, there can be dizziness. But at some point, the brain takes over. And this has been demonstrated in studies on chronic pain. So I know many of you have been hurting because there's really not a lot of good research on this in the area of vestibular disorders. But I just, again, guys, this we're dealing with the same nervous system. When we're dealing with a neural circuit problem, we're dealing with the same nervous system. It's just a matter of which system is being impacted. It's not different when you end up with medically unexplained chronic dizziness versus medically unexplained chronic pain. I know there are some subtleties in how we have to handle them. I know there are some subtleties in the symptoms that are important to you, but this particular study I'm about to mention is a really good indication of what probably happens with PPPD, MDDS, vestibular migraine that's occurred as the result of a physical injury or physical illness. So in studies on chronic pain, what they've found is that when someone has an initial pain event, initial injury, the part of the brain that lights up is the somatosensory cortex, which is the part of the brain that processes information that's coming in from your skin or your nociceptors or the receptors in your skin, the sensors in your body that tell the brain about pain. That makes a lot of sense, right? But what ends up happening later on is that when people enter the realm of chronic pain, which, by the way, we don't usually start calling chronic until after the 3-month mark. So Polo, I know you're not quite there. So we're not quite at that 3-month mark yet, but once we start to go into the land of chronic, the part of the brain that lights up in response to the pain is totally different. It's the fear and emotional centers of the brain that are lighting up in response to the pain now. So it's no longer the sensory processing centers, the centers that are getting information from your body. It's the emotional and fear response centers that are lighting up. So what that tells us is that at some point there's a shift from a physical source of the pain to I don't want to say emotional source of the pain, but a neural circuit source of the pain. And I just want to be clear here, by the way, guys. In either situation, the pain is 100% real. It is the same perception of pain. Your dizziness is real, whether it was brought on by a physical illness or not. It is always real. The question is, which part of your brain is producing the dizziness? Which part of your brain initially produced the dizziness, or which organ in your body initially produced the dizziness? And those are two completely different things for most people. So again, it's always good for us to know where things started, like why they got started. But at that point, once it's chronic, once it's been 6 months or a year and you've still been suffering, it doesn't really matter how it got started. Your brain should have compensated by now. And if it didn't compensate, then what we're dealing with is a neural circuit problem. All right. So, yes. Okay. Yeah. This is a great question. So related. So, Um, oh my gosh, you guys are so funny. Your comments in the chat are just cracking me up, and I'm just loving on all of you. Shout out to Brandon, and shout out to Lynn, and shout out to Gwen. You guys are thank you so much for the support and the congratulations. It's congratulations for all of us, folks. It's this is not about me being like a dizziness personality. This is about getting information to more people so that people don't need me. I would love to one day say I did such a great job communicating about this stuff that no one needs me anymore and I can go be a soup chef or something instead. And I said soup, not a sous chef, a soup chef, like a person who makes soups. Okay. Anyway, so Faye asks, do most of your patients know what caused their chronic dizziness? I'm struggling to really pinpoint when this started. Faye, no. I would say some people can pinpoint a big bang attack or an injury or an illness that set it off. Other people, it came on really gradually. And then sometimes there was like a sudden event that made things a lot worse, or it just kind of slowly ramped up over time. So in those cases, it can be a little harder to, to answer the question, what was going on in your life when all this started? But when you are looking at the general time period, it'll give you clues about what might have been sending your nervous system into this state of fight or flight or chronic stress. Oscar, hello, welcome. Hello. All right. Good to see you. Yeah. Yeah. So, okay, I'm going to pull up some more questions that were asked in advance. That was a good one. And I see my internet is doing a weird thing. So, hopefully, I am not going out. Okay. Wow. This is a really good question. Okay. So, Ashley, shout out to you for asking this. A great question. Ashley asks, how can I deal with the unconscious background voice that reminds me of sensations? Yeah. And actually, there was another question from Maddie asking, if I have that unconscious background voice, does that mean I'm not going to get better? So, that's a tough one, Ashley. So, I think there are probably a few ways to deal with this. And probably the most straightforward way is, most importantly, A, notice that it's happening. And I know that seems, again, I know that seems like a huge oversimplification for me to be like, oh, you have the voice, notice when it's happening, then I'll be fine. No, just the fact that you're making the implicit explicit, like it's not just I'm accepting this as truth. It's actually, oh, there's that voice in my head that's saying the thing. That gives you choices. That already gives you something to work on. Whereas if it's just kind of in the background and you're not even noticing it and it just feels like truth, then it's a lot harder to make changes. So this is where there's kind of a spectrum of ways to respond to this. One way that Ashley might really work well, and for some people, this is all that needs to happen. You don't need to dig any deeper than this, is just to practice mindful acceptance with that voice. And when you hear it, to notice it, to just kind of watch it, kind of like you would do with somatic tracking. You would notice it and watch it like you would with a symptom. And you'll notice if you actually try to focus on this voice that's saying you're never going to get better or your symptoms are going to be awful, or when you go to the grocery store, it's going to be a total cluster, right? If you do that, you'll notice if you really try to focus on it and you're not feeding it by trying to like make it stop talking, often that voice is just going to come down. Your brain is, how have I said this before? Your brain produces thoughts kind of like a dog produces droppings. It's just kind of what brains do. And most of the stuff that brains produce is not actually like good quality thoughts. It's just like brain droppings, right? So the more you start to notice these thoughts happening and just kind of notice them being like brain droppings, and you kind of, then the next step up would be to even not take them seriously or to laugh at them and say, ha, there's my brain doing the brain dropping thing again. That is one approach that, again, for many people works well. I just want you to know if you're hearing this and you're like, yeah, Yoni, I've tried the mindful acceptance or letting go thing. And when I focus on a thought, it gets louder and louder and louder. And then I go into an absolute panic and a spin. Do not worry. I'm coming for you as well. Okay. So my second recommendation, Ashley, if mindful acceptance isn't enough or if that's not working for you, is when you notice thoughts like that to get into your body. So when I say get into your body, I say, what I'm saying is notice the thought and immediately say, what am I feeling in my body right now? And this has two benefits. First, it takes you away from the thought and you're going to buy into the thought a little bit less. Okay. But the second thing is you're going to notice that in your body, there's some kind of reaction going on. And I'd like you to think about it as though your brain is trying to interpret this alarm signal in your body as something meaningful and it's creating thoughts to try to explain the alarm. But the real issue isn't the thought, it's the alarm in your body. So go into your body and try to soothe yourself using body based methods rather than trying to talk yourself out of the thought. It's like I always say, if I tell you, do not think about chocolate chip cookies, what's going to happen? What are you guys all thinking about right now? Don't think about chocolate chip cookies. Chocolate chip cookies, right? We're all thinking about chocolate chip cookies now. My mouth just started watering. I'm having a physical reaction to chocolate chip cookie thoughts. So, Ashley, trying to tell yourself not to think those thoughts is not going to help you, but getting yourself into your body and noticing your body, taking some deep breaths, not trying to stop any thoughts, not trying to stop the alarm, but just trying to be there for yourself and regulate your nervous system in a kind and compassionate way. That's also again going to pull you away from your thoughts and it's going to address the problem at the source, which is alarm or fight or flight or danger mode in your body, in your nervous system. Okay. So those are two methods. That's not enough for everyone either. So for those of you who've been through kind of your basic CBT or have basic CBT skills, those are or ACT ACT skills. Those are methods that are taught in many kinds of therapy. So if you've tried those things and they're not working, this is where I start to say it is worth understanding the roots of the alarm that's causing some of these intrusive thoughts. Now, I want to be clear. When you have chronic dizziness, you have every right to have intrusive thoughts. Of course, you're going to have a voice that's afraid. These symptoms can be terrifying and no one wants them. So, you having a voice like that in your head is the most natural thing in the world. So, there's nothing weird or, oh, this is about my damaged, inner child about that. However, the strength of someone's fear, the strength of someone's fear voice, that is related to past experiences. So, in other words, we can think of the current symptoms as something that's scary in and of itself, yes, but it's also triggering past fears. It's triggering past anxieties. It's triggering past emotions. And that's why I advocate so much for people doing the work of going back and understanding the roots of the alarm in their bodies. And again, I talk through all of this in my course. The journaling prompts that are in the workbook go through this in more detail than you've ever thought you wanted to know about your childhood. And what will often come out of that is you'll start to say, wow, this alarm that I'm feeling about my symptoms, it is definitely being triggered by my symptoms. And these worried thoughts are being triggered by my symptoms. But the general nervous system hypervigilance that I'm feeling right now has its roots are not in the dizziness. So you need to go to those things. And again, if you can't work with a therapist, people often do this on their own via journaling or through emotional awareness and expression. And I talk about both things in the free course. So if you have not taken the free course, then you could totally take the free course. It's literally free. I'm going to post a link in the comments, in the chat box. It's thesteadycoach.com/free-course. Okay. It's seriously, guys, there's literally no reason not to take it. It's free. Okay. So yeah. Yes. And, Christian, I see your comments here and I'm sorry that you are suffering so much because I know that it may seem like what I'm suggesting is simple here, but as you can see from the comments here, there are many people who've been able to get better using these methods. And if you haven't taken the course, that is where I really lay it out step by step, what to do each day, how to do it. Again, it's not going to be in a 10-minute YouTube video. So again, if you've only watched some of the videos on my channel, it may seem very confusing and very convoluted and all that stuff. So again, it is absolutely not easy to recover from this stuff. Anyone here in the chat can tell you that it is not easy. It is probably the hardest thing some of you will ever do in your entire life, and I'm not exaggerating. It is so difficult, but it is something that can be done. It is definitely something that can be done. Okay, so moving on to Julie's question, do people really fully recover? Yes, people do really fully recover, and I know some of the success stories are ones who are talking about the middle of their recovery, like they're a lot better, but they're not 100% recovered yet. So I'm going to just put in the chat if you're interested. Carla's story, Julie's story, part 2, Anna's story, Whitney's story, and then Brock's story that's coming up. All of those off the top of my head are ones that are completely fully recovered. And again, I will definitely be able to, again, hopefully over time, the more people volunteer. Oh, and Rochelle, she's coming too. I have Rochelle. I'll put her in the chat. So Rochelle is fully recovered. Mario, yes, thank you, Joella. Mario is fully recovered. Yes, yes. Okay. Yes. Okay, wonderful. Yes, Andrew. Oh, Andrea, hello. So Andrea's here, and Andrea is one of our success stories. So just pulling her name up here, you can listen to her success stories. She had MDDS, so you can hear how she's doing in the success story, also in the success stories playlist. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And okay, going through. Yes. Okay. So actually, this is a really relevant question from Natalie. Okay, Natalie, I'm so glad you asked this question because I'm going to reiterate that I'm going to actually have a video about this. So I'm currently going through the free course, working through the workbook. I'm seeing small improvements. Do you have an average recovery time, or is it all over the place? It is all over the place, Natalie. I just got an email. So I get emails a lot. In fact, thankfully, as many of you know, I have this incredibly gifted and wonderful communications guru named Tara, who is the one who really handles pretty much everything nowadays. So I don't always see all emails that are coming through, but I always see the recovery stories because she makes sure that I see them. And I just got an email today from a gentleman who went through all sorts of medical treatments, and he recovered in like a week after doing the free course. Okay. And then there are others who, and I'm not going to name any of you, but who've been part of the membership community for a while, and the recovery process is slow and arduous for them, and it takes a while. And I have a video outlined. My notebook's not here. I was going to show you. I have a notebook. I have a video outlined that I'm set to film, and that video is going to be on what factors speed up or slow down recovery. So I'm going to be talking about that in a structured video. But Natalie, I would say if someone can really understand the stuff that I talk about on my channel, if they really are like, okay, I guess I can see how I might have neural circuit dizziness, and that person has reasonable support in his or her life and not a ton of anxiety and panic from past experiences to work through, which by the way does not necessarily mean you can't get better. You can totally get better. It just may be a longer road if you have more stuff to work with, of course. Then people get better pretty quickly. I would say most people see an improvement within the first 6 weeks, if not in symptoms, then at least in anxiety. And for those of you, of course, who are suffering right now, you know what a huge deal that is. Again, I just want to encourage those of you, the fortunate few who don't get better very quickly. You can still get better, and your process is your own, and I'm not going anywhere. So you're going to have support as long as you need it. So take your time, and you do you. And the whole point of this process, in my opinion, is not just getting you out of symptoms, but also making sure your nervous system is not going to get you into symptoms in another way at some point in the future. So it's an opportunity to address lifelong patterns of anxiety, of perfectionism, of people pleasing, of all this other stuff that I talk about on my channel. So you don't have to do this anymore, and you can live a better, more fulfilling life as you're recovering. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so moving on to some more of the questions. I wish I could answer all the questions in the chat. You guys have such amazing questions. Oh, I see you, Maya and Joan. Yes, hello, hello, and Mindy. And amazing. Oh, yes, I'm sorry that you're dealing with kidney stones right now. Oh my gosh, yeah, those can be so difficult. Again, it just recognize that those kinds of things are going to send your fight or flight system into disarray temporarily because you're obviously having physical pain right now. So, my best recommendations is back to basics, doing the best that you can to be kind to yourself, to give yourself a little bit of extra space, a little bit of extra grace, maybe backing off. And if there's been any exposure work or any like really tough journaling work, this may not be the time to do this. Let your body heal first, let the kidney stone situation resolve itself, and then come back to it. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. So moving on here. Okay. Great question from Jill. Hello, Jill. I didn't see you in the chat, but I know Jill because she's a frequent commenter on my channel, so I know her, or I feel like I know her. So Jill says when she went to a couple weddings, and she said when she was distracted, she had no symptoms for a few days, and then the symptoms slowly came back over the next couple of days, and she was wondering if that means she's doing something wrong. So no, Jill. On the contrary, first of all, I just want to say that stinks. I'm sorry that that happened because I know sometimes those ups and downs. What am I saying? Sometimes the ups and downs of recovery are absolutely the hardest things to deal with. 100%, they are people's least favorite thing. The fact that the recovery like looks like this, it's awful. Okay, it can be really difficult. So I'm really sorry that that's happening. However, when you see something like this, you give yourself a big green check mark and you say, this is neural circuit dizziness because no physical damage or tissue issue, that rhymed, explains why you being at a wedding and being happy would change your symptoms. That does not make sense. So, Jill, when I hear about things like this, I say, look, you already know what to do to get better. So keep doing those things since obviously here you are. I know you've been listening for a while, Jill, and I know you've gotten better. Just keep this, put this on your evidence board. And I encourage all of you to start making a list of the evidence for your neural circuit dizziness, writing down all of the ways in which you know if you have collected evidence that the symptoms you have are neural circuit dizziness. Um, when when this happens, when the symptoms go away, when you're happy or distracted, the only explanation for that is that your nervous system was not in a state of alarm. You were distracted and therefore you didn't have symptoms. So again, that makes total sense. Chalk this up to neural circuit dizziness and keep going with the recovery process. Okay. Yes. All right. So more questions here. Okay. So yeah. Okay. So, yes, I see some interesting comments. Okay. So Mindy asks, this is pretty related to what I just answered. How should we go about when we have an event we need to attend, but are scared of the sensations happening or experience them? Then what should we do in the moment there with others around? So, Mindy, that's a really tough question. So, I think that one of your main objectives during recovery, I actually was having a conversation with someone earlier today about how I think it's really interesting that people think my main message is exposure because I really just don't think that's what I'm saying a lot of the time. But uh, my point being, yes, getting out and going and doing the things that you love is super important, and I want you to do that. But actually, from my perspective, that is not actually what gets people better in and of itself. Many of you had symptoms and kept exposing yourself, and nothing changed, and you just kept living your lives, and you were just miserable. So that's not how we get out of this. I think there's a Mindy, in my opinion, there has to be a change in the way that you relate to yourself and the way that you respond to yourself when you're having a difficult time. And when you're in a place where you are feeling uncomfortable, your very first job is to go inside yourself and see what it is that you need. And what you're going to find is that you're going to hear some conflicts. You're going to hear there's going to be a part of you that says, I want to get away from this. This is super uncomfortable. There's going to be a part of you that may be scared. There's going to be a part of you that wants to stay. And your job is to actually pause and bother to listen in to what those voices inside you are saying and seeing if you can respond to yourself compassionately. Respond to each one of those compassionately. So the voice that says, I want you to get out of here. I'm really scared. Maybe it would be a message of soothing, breathing, putting your hand on your heart, knowing I'm sorry that you're scared, something that you would say to someone else who is scared. And again, I'm not saying that this is the final solution to the problem at this point, Mindy. What I'm saying is this is the way that you need to respond in the moment before making a decision about what you're going to do. And then maybe there's that voice that says, you really need to stay. Notice what that voice's intention is. Are you shaming yourself into staying? Like, if I don't stay, then I'm broken or other people are going to notice and everyone's going to know. And then you're feeling bad about yourself. Then see if you can stop shaming yourself. See if you can ask the shame to step aside and see if you actually want to be there or not. There may be times when it's appropriate to leave a situation. There may be times when you're not feeling well, and it's an act of self-compassion for you to say, "You know what? Today my brain says no, and I'm gonna try this again tomorrow, and I'm not running away out of fear. I'm deliberately leaving out of self-compassion for myself." Okay? And there may be times when you're gonna wanna push through and stay. When the only voice that is trying to get you to leave is just a fear and avoidance type of voice, and you decide, I think I can be there for myself and I can push myself a little bit and get through this. And I actually do want to be here. Then there may be that's a time and a place to actually push through. So there are times and places to push through, and there are times and places to compassionately back off and go do something else. And that is totally fine. Yeah. Oh, thank you, Julie. Julie is here in the chat. She says she's given my links to her physio. Please do, Julie. Again, I asked at the very beginning of the Q&A, for those of you who weren't here at the very beginning, please give out my resources to medical professionals who have been involved in your process. Uh, again, I can't do this by myself. I'm putting the information out there, but I need help getting it to the people who need it. And I don't just mean clients. I don't just mean people who are suffering from chronic dizziness. I mean the medical professionals who are seeing them, because I'm going to have so much more of an impact. This channel is going to have so much more of an impact if you give it to your physical therapist or your doctor. Hopefully some of them buy into it. Some of them may not, and that's okay. But if they start sharing it with even 5 people, um, each 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 provider is going to reach more people than I could possibly reach by myself. Yeah. Yeah, that's so awesome. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. So, good question. Yep, Daniel, I will be answering your question in a little bit. Um, and Beth, with neuritis, I actually have a video on this. So I'm going to link to this in the chat. So Beth is asking if I can comment on neuritis. So actually I have 2 videos on neuritis. Okay. So the first one is this one. So um, this one never got popular. I think it was just the keywords I was using there. No one really watched it, but that's okay. It's about vestibular hypofunction, if you're curious. And then this one is, I think, more up to date, more succinct, and a really interesting video. I actually think I put it in the chat earlier. It's called Ask Dr. Yo, Can I Recover from Chronic Dizziness If I Have Ear Damage or Weakness? So please take a look at those 2 videos. I think that'll answer your question. Okay, so moving on to a question from Ariane. And Ariane had a few questions, but Ariane, I picked this one because I think that this one is going to be applicable to a great number of people. I'm really excited to be able to answer this publicly. Um, but before I do that, I'm sorry. I just want to pull this up in the chat. Okay. Michelle says, I just want to say it's so nice to meet and talk to people that understand. I'm so lonely in Arizona and don't have many friends. I wish we could do a community meetup. Michelle, I so hear you on this. So, we have the membership community. Of course, it's virtual. I would love to have local meetups. Of course, it, there is I cannot overstate this. People probably think I'm being like kind of mushy when I say this, but I mean this in a very like scientific way. Connection to other people is an essential part of this recovery process. there is nothing more regulating than feeling like other people understand you. The aloneness and isolation that people get from this condition is a huge part of what makes symptoms chronic. Having a lack of support. I've seen people have like actively hostile situations, but not even actively hostile relationships. Even just the isolation from feeling like no one gets it. Even when you're surrounded by friends and loved ones who understand ish, or they love you but they just don't get it. Like that really harms people. So the best thing you can do is connect to people who understand. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, sorry. So, Ariane, I'm answering your question now. Okay. So, she asks, do all people with visual delays and other visual symptoms have the same objective test results? So, Ariane has mentioned she has convergence deficiency and binocular vision dysfunction. Sorry, not bilateral. I'm always thinking bilateral because of my audiology background, but binocular vision dysfunction. So, I know, Ariane, you've seen this video, but other people may not have. So I have a video on that mentioned these 2 conditions specifically. So if you're curious about visual symptoms, I'll put this in the chat as well. And here we go. And the video is called "Stop Chronic Vision Symptoms Without Exercises." I know that is a clickbaity uh, title. I'm sorry in advance, but it's a good video. I think it's really helpful. I talk about convergence deficiency and binocular vision dysfunction. And what I said in that video, and I'm just going to reiterate it here, is that those are, as far as I'm concerned, most not always, but in many cases, normal abnormalities. So not to say convergence issues are always normal or that they can't be helped by vision therapy, but they occur rampantly in the general population. Most people do not have visual vertigo and dizziness. So they are not, as far as I'm concerned, the cause. Now, are they a contributing factor for some people? I don't know enough to say. We don't have evidence to tell me the answer to that, but I've seen so many people at this point recover without vision therapy or without vestibular therapy just from talking about their feelings and realizing it's neural circuit dizziness and addressing stress, that I believe that it's similar to bulging or protruding discs in someone's back, where again, a physical abnormality doesn't necessarily explain why someone has physical symptoms. So again, it's what Dr. Schubiner would call a normal abnormality. So I think of that in many cases of people who have convergence deficiency and bilateral vision dysfunction. So to answer your question, do people with visual delays and other visual symptoms have the same objective test results? Um, I don't have data to tell you, but I can tell you that a large number of people would test positive for those 2 conditions in the general population. So chances are that many people with visual vertigo have those conditions, but that doesn't mean that it's causal. It's like I said, it's incidental. So when they do MRIs of people's backs and they have bulging discs, the doctor may say, "Aha, that's why you have pain." But they can MRI 50 people and 25 of them will have bulging discs and don't have chronic pain. So again, I don't this does not explain symptoms. This does not explain symptoms. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that, Kyrene. She says, "Spent thousands on vision therapy and didn't do anything." I'm sorry, and I hear you, and that's why I made the course completely free, because I heard this from so many people. I I'm not saying that people shouldn't be paid for their services. I get it, but I know that many of you have spent thousands of dollars trying to get better, and I don't want you to have to spend money to get more information. So, yeah. Okay. So, yeah. All right. So let me take a look. I think I have more questions that I pulled out in advance. Yeah. Yeah. So, hi. I'm just going to say hi to Deborah. So, I'm calling you out, Deborah. Deborah, you wrote me such a lovely note on the comments to the post, and thank you so much for the kind words. And Um, so Deborah's saying here, as soon as I wake up in the morning, the MDDS is in full force. I go to work anyway, no matter what, and fake it all day long. All I can do is come home and rest. And I get that. And this is why, and Deborah, you've heard me say this, so this isn't me preaching at you by any means. Deborah, I know has done a lot of work on this other stuff, but this is why, again, I find it so curious that when people watch my channel, what sometimes they'll take away is, oh, she's saying I need to not be afraid and go do the things. And again, while that is super important, doing the things and being afraid of the things is not necessarily what's leading to your nervous system being in a state of fight or flight. So we really want to drill down and get to those things, and that can look really different for different people. Um, yeah. So frequently you've probably heard me talk on my channel about traumatic experiences. And I think everyone here can at least see why I might say a traumatic experience might lead to the nervous system being in a fight or flight type state, right? But what I find among my clients is frequently it's not something horribly traumatic that we can point to and say, ah, that was it. Okay. So, although sometimes it is, sometimes it's the loss of a close family member. I'm thinking of a few of you right now that I know have lost close family members. Sometimes it can be, had a really scary medical event. So some of you have like medical traumas. You almost died, or you were seriously ill, or you were diagnosed with cancer and you didn't know if you were going to make it. Like those things can also lead the nervous system to be in a state of hyper alertness. But other things that lead the nervous system to be in a state of hyper alertness are can be more subtle, and they can have to do more with internal pressures that you're putting on yourself. So William, I know you've been very vocal on my channel about the things that I say um, about people pleasing or perfectionism. And you've said, I'm not a people pleaser, perfectionist, or super nice. So stop saying that I am. So those are the classic ways that people will often respond to feeling a sense of unworthiness as a child. But I see other patterns as well. And in fact, I'm not implying that this is always hard and fast, but what I'll often see is sometimes it's split depending on whether someone is male or female and the kind of society that person grows up in. Because the other set of people that I see who are dealing with a feeling of unworthiness as kind of the general, like deep underlying issue, is those people will become particularly aggressive go-getters. And they're not like people pleasing, like fawning, conscientious, like super nice people. Although again, I see a lot of very, very, very nice people, like so many that of course there's clearly a trend here. There is a subgroup of people who don't fall into that stereotype or that category, who responded to early attachment issues or responded to difficulties earlier in life by becoming very aggressive and very 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 focused on making sure that they were achieving a particular image for themselves or a particular level of material achievement or what have you. So I I just wanted to specify that because I know again William brought that up in the chat, that it's not always people pleasing and conscientiousness. Although many of you here in the chat, I know you're smiling at each other and recognizing each other. Most people I see with neural circuit dizziness have these traits. Some people don't. Some people are particularly go-getters. And to me, when I see someone who doesn't have those perfectionistic or conscientious traits, what I look at with the person is what's really driving that person, what's driving them. And there are often kind of two sides to what's driving a person. There's kind of the good stuff, like I want to achieve this because it makes me feel good. And there's also I have to avoid this because it makes me feel bad. So I look at what that person might be avoiding. Yeah. Okay. So gonna pull up this question from Maddie. She's asking, oh, okay. This is a great question. So Maddie had the fun experience of her symptoms getting better in one environment and then getting worse in another. And she was wondering, is that normal? Is that like normal for this stuff? And yeah, that is totally a normal thing. So when that happens, you can think about it in a bunch of different ways. I'll give you a few options here. So if they've improved in one environment and they've gotten worse in another, one way to think about it is because you lost your fear of the symptoms in that one environment, or you address some kind of emotional factor in one environment, the fear level has dropped in that environment. You're not responding with the fight or flight response, and your symptoms are going away in that environment. But in the second environment, either something new came up or your brain made a random association with that environment that's not necessarily emotionally meaningful. And Brandon, I saw you here in the chat. We had a good conversation yesterday on the members only Q&A. So by the way, I do live Q&As every week in the membership community. So it's not once every blue moon like here on YouTube. Um, Yesterday we had this great conversation about how sometimes your brain is just going to make random associations and there isn't some deep underlying emotional cause that you have to figure out or understand. Your job is to look and see if one is there. So Maddie, say you suddenly developed symptoms going to a relative's house. It would be worth thinking about if something is going on with that relationship. I always ask people, especially when it has to do with another person, you definitely want to take a look at that relationship. But it might be that, it was Tuesday and your brain's like, on Tuesdays, I am going to react to this particular environment. So either way, when that happens, Maddie, again, big green check mark, neural circuit dizziness at its finest. This does not make sense from a physical illness perspective, which means this is more reinforcement for the idea that this is your nervous system and this is brain associations and prediction errors, which are, again, the things I talk about on my channel all the time. So you'll be able to address it and get better. Okay. All right. So, yeah. Yeah. So, Deborah, this is a very good point. So, coming back to what Deborah was saying earlier. So, she said, I had a lot of family trauma, but was pretty chill on vacation when this happened to me from that plane. I'm an only child, take care of my mother has lung cancer too. So, I just want you to notice what you said, Deborah. And again, this is not like a psychoanalysis or me telling you what to do or anything like that. You and I, we go way back to the beginning of my channel. We've been together for a long time and I love and appreciate you very much. But Deborah is bringing up a good point here that sometimes the physical trigger for the symptoms wasn't occurring in the backdrop of the trauma. So, say you had early family or developmental trauma. Your nervous system was just kind of in a hyper alert state. And then you had the bad luck of having neuritis or having motion triggered MDDS, which, by the way, I just want to be very clear. I've said this before, but I got to say it again. Having after motion after a plane ride, after a boat ride, after a car ride is normal. It happens to a large number of people. 80% of people get off a boat and have after motion. It's called land sickness. It's common. So what takes us into the realm of this is neural circuit is when it persists, when it lasts, when the brain can't let go of that signal. So even if the trauma had nothing to do with the plane, and I totally understand this, and wasn't a traumatic plane ride at all, you weren't particularly stressed. If your nervous system was primed for this and there was just kind of a buildup of just absolutely normal stressors, nothing crazy or unusual going on at that time, your nervous system could attribute danger to that innocuous signal, to that particular motion, that particular symptom, and that's going to make it chronic. And Deborah, the other thing you're telling me here is you're an only child, you had family trauma, and you're taking care of your mom. So your trauma is alive and well in your life currently, right now. And I'm not saying that you have any alternative. And I'm thinking again of some of you in the chat who I know well. I don't want to call anyone out because we are, I want to keep it private. For those of you in my membership community, I don't want to share details about you, but there are many caregivers in my membership community, and it is so, so hard. And I know it's an unavoidable, in many ways, source of stress, but the way that your nervous system reacts to current stressors, like having to take care of a parent or a child or a sister or a friend, has to do it goes back. It's going to take your nervous system back a long line back to your early experiences, because that's when all the programming was done. And my message here is that programming can be undone. It can be rewritten so that your nervous system doesn't respond that way, even if the caregiving situation isn't going to change. To an extent, of course, I'm not saying caregiving is always stressful, especially when someone's ill, but there's something about the way that this is threatening your nervous system that, again, likely goes back a ways. Yeah. 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 Oh, you're so welcome, Deborah. Again, I wish I could give you a hug. I know that it may seem weird when I say this in the interviews, but when I'm interviewing people for the success stories, I'm often meeting them for the first time. I'm purposely not just interviewing people I've worked with one-on-one. I'm interviewing people who've gotten better using my channel, the free course, other therapists. I don't care. I just want to document for you guys that this is possible. So often when I'm meeting someone for the first time, especially if it's someone who is in the community or who was in, who's been on my channel for a while, it's like there you are, the human on the other end of this who I'm trying to reach, and I feel you, and I wish again I could meet each and every one of you. It would be amazing. So, yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. So, Mindy, this is a good question. I'm glad you asked this. I'm not sure I'm going to have an answer that's going to make you happy, but Mindy asks if I'm doing one-on-one work. Is the wait time still over a year? I want to share my personal situation with you and get help from me personally. So I am not taking on new one-on-one clients right now. I am completely saturated. I have new coaches that I've brought on. So I wish I could bring them on to you right now to introduce you. I'm trying very hard to convince them to come on for interviews. So the first is Pippa. So Pippa is an audiologist who recovered from vestibular migraine. She had vestibular migraines for 9 years, and her story is remarkable. She recovered using the exact same techniques that I talk about with you guys. She is very well trained. She is amazing, and she is taking one-on-one clients, but right now only from my coaching group, again, just because the waiting list right now is so long. The other person is Jill, who is my mom. So she is an IFS therapist, an internal family systems therapist, a clinical social worker, and a martial arts instructor. And she's a trauma therapist. So she's taking on clients who have trauma to work through, because again, this is in many cases, for many people, related to traumatic experiences. And then Dr. Leanne is also an audiologist. She's not going to be seeing people for coaching, for one-on-one coaching, but she is going to be seeing people for evaluations. So my goal is for every person who needs a one-on-one consult to be able to get one and get one quickly. So she's going to be seeing only initial consults, which means she'll be able to see people without too long of a wait typically, and she'll be able to review test results and take a look at everything that you've done so far and help point you in the right direction and help send you on your way, help you find the right therapist if you need a therapist. So it won't be ongoing work, but it at least is a way to make sure someone can hear your personal story and get you pointed in the right direction. So that's where I'm going right now. Again, I would love, I wish I could work with everyone one-on-one. I would love to. Right now, the only way to work with me personally is through the coaching group. So I have the VIP coaching group. It is $99 a month. We meet on Zoom on Tuesdays at 10 a.m. Eastern and 2 p.m. Eastern. We are going to be occasionally adding an extra time for those of you in Australia and New Zealand. So it'll be either an early morning time for me or an evening time for me. So either early morning or evening for you. So stay tuned for that. I will be announcing that again, most likely through my newsletter and my membership community. So yeah. Okay. So, oh, hello, Kara. Hello. I just want to say, I'm going to bring Kara's comment up here because this is just one of my favorite things that Kara says. She says, my symptoms were spicy today. I love that. And then I realized I had not eaten, made a big difference, right? Sometimes your body is just talking to you because there's actually something wrong and it needs to be addressed. So that's wonderful, Kara. I'm glad you're feeling better. Okay. So, I think I know who this person is. Is this Let me see. Okay, hang on a second. Let me find it. Sorry, guys, I lost my post. Here we are. Okay, so asking about fibromyalgia and brain fog. Okay, so with fibromyalgia and brain fog, the question was, are those similar? Are those related to chronic dizziness symptoms? So from my perspective, fibromyalgia, or unexplained chronic pain, brain fog, chronic fatigue, all of those things fall under the category of neural circuit disorders. I don't specialize in them. I'm an audiologist. So for me, tinnitus is and vestibular issues are the things that I'm by far the most trained in. But I have discovered that I can't pigeonhole myself into those symptoms because almost always my clients are coming to me with other symptoms. And not only that, if they don't currently have other symptoms, frequently they have had in the past things like fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome. So these are all symptoms of nervous system dysregulation. And I saw someone else, I'm so sorry, it flew by because I'm seeing so many comments in the chat, but someone asked about POTS and dysautonomia. Also, again, it's a little bit outside of my area of expertise because oh, that is you, Daniel. Okay, wonderful. So it is a little bit outside my area of expertise because again, I'm an audiologist, although I have training in POTS. That's something that I learned as part of vestibular therapy training. But in my opinion, again, assuming there is no medical cause, because there are some medical conditions that can cause dysautonomia that are actually physical tissue damage related things, we're dealing with a nervous system dysregulation issue. So fibromyalgia, brain fog, chronic pain of other kinds, IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, um, interstitial cystitis, pelvic or intimate pain, plantar fasciitis, and I think in many cases is mind body, chronic migraines. Someone else in the comments of the post asked if these techniques can be applied to migraine. Absolutely. These are all again symptoms of the same exact issue. So if you want to apply these methods to those things, you just cross out the word dizziness and put in the word pain instead. And yes, visual snow, Brian. I actually have a video on that. So if you want to look at my channel, you can find it. If you don't see the chat, here, I'll put this in the chat for you. But oh no, it went away. Sometimes, I might actually be able to find my own videos. Here it is in the chat. So you can search for, there we go. So visual snow is right there. There's a video on that. If you want to find it and you can't see the chat, you can just look on my channel for the search term visual snow. So yeah, all of these things, again, medically unexplained chronic symptoms. Again, that important thing is medically unexplained. So we want to make sure that you don't have a physical tissue damage cause. But once we're in the land of functional neurology, or your doctor says it's anxiety, or I don't know what's wrong with you, or here, take this anti-anxiety medication, this will help, then we're dealing with a central nervous system issue, a prediction error issue, and that applies just as equally to these other conditions. So, yes, gravitational pulls, William, being pulled to the right. Um, Absolutely. Absolutely. So, here's something I wanna say, for you, Daniel, if you haven't done Curable yet, here, I'm gonna put this in the chat, there's a link. So, just full disclosure, I'm a paid affiliate of Curable, but I've been recommending their app for years. So, curable.com/ the steady coach will get you 6 free weeks from the Curable app. Curable is written for people who have chronic pain. So if chronic pain is one of your symptoms, it's going to fit you like a glove. And the best thing about the app is they have a panic button. So when you are feeling really low and really upset, then you can totally press the panic button and they will give you something to work on. So, yes. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, so Daniel, following up on his question, I'm glad you stuck around, Daniel. I told you I was going to get to your question. He says foggy mind can happen at the same time as PPPD. Yes, yes, it can happen at the same time as PPPD. So, in fact, I would say it's pretty ubiquitous. So, I'm going to put this in the chat and say the number one symptom of neural circuit dizziness is dizziness, followed by visual symptoms. I'm just going to, I really need to make a video about this. Okay, so visual symptoms. 3 would be probably a tie between neck pain or head pressure, eye pressure, pain. Okay, so 3 would be that, and then 4 would be fatigue and brain fog. Okay, so those would be the top, probably the top 4, and then 5 maybe we'd have dissociation in there somewhere, derealization. The rocking, bobbing, swaying a little bit less common, but not obviously, as you've seen here in the chat, not uncommon at all, just not as common as the visual symptoms. So eye trembling, yes, can be totally a neural circuit dizziness issue. Again, think of it as a high arousal state. So if your nervous system is in a very hyper alert state, then it's going to cause perceptual issues, and so you can perceive things like eye trembling. Yes. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, good. All right, so there we go. I got those. Let me hide that comment. Okay, there we go. So fibromyalgia and brain fog. Yeah, and Daniel here is saying that the brain fog is even worse than the pain. I totally hear you on this. So I actually do have a video on fatigue that applies equally to brain fog in some ways. So I'm going to put that in the chat. I don't think it's going to be as 100% relevant to what you're going through, Daniel? Um, there we go. But if you look on my channel for the word fatigue, you will FATIGUE, you will find this video. And again, I mentioned brain fog, but it's a lot of the same issues. I talk about danger mode, how it hijacks your braking system and can kind of lead your brain to be foggy. But also, if you think about it, if your brain is very busy trying to keep you alive, it really doesn't care about your higher level thinking processes. In fact, I have young children at home. I have a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old, and when my 6-year-old gets really upset about something, I was actually just telling her this morning she was really upset about something, and she was like, "I can't find any clothes to wear," and she was really upset about something else, and I said, let's see if we can hold off on making that decision right now, because the part of your brain that makes decisions right now, it's not working when you're really upset. We have to calm down the nervous system first, and then that part of your brain reboots, and then you can make decisions and think clearly. So right now, Daniel, you're in a state of hyper alertness, of your nervous system being saturated, of being overwhelmed. So your brain doesn't really care about your ability to do math or think about complex thoughts. It wants you to stay alive. So that's why that happens. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So so why is it that when I am calm, like there's no current stressor and I want to just sleep or something, my nervous system gets anxious and I start feeling stressed again, or a sensation happens? Yeah. So Mindy, this is kind of what I was talking about earlier. And I think this is something people really misunderstand here on my channel, because they hear me talk about stress and they're like, Yoni, I am not stressed. Was calm as can be when this all started. Like, what gives, right? Stress is not about immediate stress. It's about, first of all, what state is your nervous system in all the time? And if this is happening to you, Mindy, this tells me that even when you're calm, your nervous system is still watching for predators, right? But also, the way that we respond to even normal situations in our lives can be internally stressful. Okay. So I gave this example in a video that I haven't released yet. It's going to be about Meniere's disease specifically. So shout out to those of you with Meniere's disease or Meniere's diagnoses. I've got you. I've got a video coming out about that finally. So it's an Ask Dr. Yo video, but I think it explains what you need to know. But in that video, I give this example of two people who are moving. So let's just say person A had a really traumatic childhood and had a lot of abandonment issues from a parent, and they lost a parent to divorce, and they moved a bunch when they were a kid. And then the other person had no such circumstances. When those two people move nowadays, what's going to happen is they're going to have completely different responses in their body in response to the move. And they are going to not necessarily even know it on the outside. So people's internal stress load is not necessarily equivalent to anxiety. This is why I'm very careful on my channel not to use the word anxiety very much, because people think of anxiety as a conscious process. Like, I'm actively worrying and I'm feeling like all this trembling and fight or flight. And they're like, no, I'm calm. I'm fine. Some of the people who I've seen have the most difficult cases of neural circuit dizziness are those who are outwardly like the most calm, chill people, because they're so good at putting a cap on what they're actually feeling and the stress that they're actually feeling. They're so good at coping that they're they're not even aware that this is going on. So again, I know some of you uh, have taken offense at me saying, that people are in this fight or flight mode, and it's like, I wasn't in fight or flight. Really, Mindy, this tells me that your nervous system again is in this hyper alert state, and your job is to remember that and work with it that way, even when you're feeling calm. So whether that's using a bottom up approach, like a nervous system regulation routine where you're doing a lot of breathing and a lot of parasympathetic activities, things to pull you out of a sympathetic state or out of that state of fight or flight, or looking back at some of the emotional experiences that keep flinging you back into this fight or flight response. Yeah. Okay. So, Karis, I see you. Hello. And oh, hello. Hello. That's my mom over there in the chat. If you see her, that's Jill. Say hi to her. She's tuning in. Hi. All right. So let me just look back on the chat. So I think I answered most of the questions that were asked in advance. Let me just take a quick look and make sure I didn't miss anything that I'd tagged to answer because I tried to respond to everyone, at least with some helpful information when I looked at it. Um, and yeah, so the question is okay, so Charlotte, I don't know if you're here in the chat. I'm pretty sure I saw you here, Charlotte. So Charlotte is asking just generally help. Okay. I'm just going to put this in the chat. I'm going to read Charlotte's comment here. Charlotte says, I've been dizzy all of the time for about 10 months, probably as a result of COVID. It is not vertigo. I have downbeat nystagmus, which is not the result of a vestibular issue as they've been checked. I've done PT, seen an ophthalmologist, audiologist, ENT doctor, neurologist, neuro-ophthalmologist. I tried several medications, but nothing has helped. The neurologist suggested the hydroxyzine. And she says, yeah, I'm struggling. Like, what do I do? How do I get better? So, oh, you are here, Charlotte. Hello. Okay. So, Charlotte, welcome to my channel. Everything that, like, all of my advice essentially is condensed into the course, and it's free. And it is here at thesteadycoach.com/free course, free dash course, rather. I'm putting that in the chat. Um, it's completely free. There is no pay at all. If you want to, there is an accompanying workbook that's around $20. If you happen to want to have something in writing, you can buy the workbook, but you don't need it. You can take the course completely for free and it'll explain everything. So Charlotte, please, please, please take the course. I think it'll explain. And I have a membership community as well. It's $13 a month, so it's very inexpensive. I do Q&As like this every week. So some people take the course and say, I think it would be really nice to be able to ask Yonit some questions to understand some of this stuff, and they can come into the community and I'll answer them in the live Q&As every week. So you are welcome to do that, but you don't need to pay anything. Just take the course for free. Another thing that I had already mentioned, Charlotte, as well, is Curable. So that's not a free app, excuse me. That's an app. It's also around $10, $12 a month. But start with the course. And if you like the course, you can also consider going to Curable, which is curable.com/the steady coach. So I'm a paid affiliate, full disclosure. They'll give you 6 weeks free if you use my link. But again, start with the course because it's specifically for chronic dizziness. Okay. Yeah. So Gwen, thank you. Yes, let's answer this question for you. Okay. So, all right. Gwen asks, what about DOMs creating an uptick in symptoms after weight training? How to work with that? Don't always know I've overdone it until a day or two later. So, I just want to say, Gwen, from my perspective, and I'm not implying that I'm like the most knowledgeable person in the universe about this and that I'm 100% right about this, but I don't think it's the DOMs causing an uptick in your symptoms after weight training. I think you're dealing with a very normal and appropriate stress response that's occurring after the weight training. So weight training is a type of eustress, which means that it's a type of stress that you're applying to your body on purpose in order to try to help your body adapt to stress. Okay. So when you're weight training, you're sending your body the message that you're actually in danger. And then when your muscles are sore, your body is actually saying, hey, I'm injured, slow down, don't do anything, give me a minute to repair myself. Okay. So by the way, with DOMs, it doesn't necessarily correlate to the effectiveness of the workout. So for those of you who are like, by the way, DOMs, delayed onset muscle sickness, delayed onset muscle. Oh my gosh. Okay, no, I gotta know. What does the DOM stand for? What does the S stand for? Someone give it to me in the chat. Andy, where are you? Soreness, soreness, delayed onset muscle soreness, not sickness. Oh my gosh. Andy, you let me down. I'm totally kidding. Andy, I saw you. Hello. I hope you're still here. But delayed onset muscle soreness. So it's not necessarily an indication of a good workout. So don't feel like you have to work yourself into soreness in order to have a good workout. In fact, I would argue that a really good trainer is someone who's not making you so sore that you're sore for days afterwards. It's okay to have the soreness, but you can actually avoid that by slowly progressing yourself. But anyway, yeah, as far as the delayed onset muscle soreness, it is just it's again, it's a signal from your nervous system, from your body, slow down. We're repairing damage that was made to your muscles from the workout that you did. And it makes complete sense, Gwen, that this would be accompanied by an uptick in symptoms and it's not dangerous. So the way that I would frame this, the way that I would look at this is when that happens, you say, ah, okay, first of all, this is safe. And this is just a signal that my body is dealing with stress. And right now, my body responds to stress with symptoms, but it won't always be that way. And someone else asked a question about this. Will I have to do somatic tracking for the rest of my life? So the answer is absolutely not. Eventually, your brain will stop responding to all stress with chronic symptoms. And I know this from my clients, and I know this from myself. I myself suffered from mind body symptoms that I no longer have. I get stressed out nowadays. Case in point, I mentioned that 10,000 followers just creeped up on me because I was so busy with a bunch of other things, which is really sad because you guys are amazing. And I really should have been like counting the days, but I didn't even. I mean, it kind of took me by surprise. I was very stressed out and I didn't have migraines and I didn't have IBS and I didn't have back pain. So eventually your body will learn not to give you physical symptoms every time you're stressed out. But for right now, that's where it's at. So when you notice that, it's 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 again, the most important thing to say to yourself is, ah, this is just my brain responding to stress. And my other suggestion, Gwen, I noticed that you used the word overdone it, and I totally understand that was just the way you phrased it here. But I'm careful not to use words like that because overdone makes it sound like it was dangerous and you can't do those things. Whereas the way I like to see it is you're in a dynamic adjustment process of seeing where your body's at a given time, right? So Gwen, this is where a progressive overload type program might be super helpful to you. And I am so happy to say, so this is something I do for my membership community too. I always have Easter eggs toward the end of a Q&A for people who've actually hung in with me the whole time. So one of my Easter eggs is that I have a friend, Dr. Sharon Gam, who is an amazing exercise physiology person, and she's designing a program specifically for people with chronic dizziness. She and I are working on it together. I will hopefully have it available for people to get soon. We're working on it, but it's going to follow this principle that I talked about in the video on exercise about progressive overload. So Gwen, you probably already seen this video since you're asking about physical exercise, but just in case you haven't, I talk about I don't give practical information in this video. It's more informative than like here, follow this program. But I talk about progressive overload in the there we go in the chat, and it's how and why you should exercise for chronic dizziness recovery. So I talk very specifically about how much how much rest you should take and how you want to follow a program that is linearly, like very slowly building up to give your body time to adjust between sessions. So Gwen, those are my thoughts in general. Yeah. I like it too. Thanks, Gwen. I know I can get a little bit picky about the words I'm using. And so I'm not implying that what you said was wrong, but I just feel like a dynamic adjustment process really frames it differently for your brain. And so there's this great pain psychologist named Dr. Rachel Zoffness, and some of you may have heard of her. She's brilliant and she's awesome. And one of the things she says, and I've heard her say in interviews, is your brain hears everything your mouth says. So when I imply things like remission, that's another one of my big, like, I hate that word. When I imply things like overdone it, I'm not saying, oh, we have to be super superstitious about everything we say. No, but when I'm implying to myself that there's something wrong with what I'm doing and that there's something dangerous about it, then my brain's hearing that. And because our brains in neural circuit dizziness land are a little sensitive to danger, we want to try to avoid sending danger messages to people. All right. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. So, Jane Maria, I'm going to answer this one because I think this is a very good point. Okay. So, we've had discussions about this in the membership community. My trauma was BPPV. Any off balance, now my body panics. I now have anxiety, which makes me dizzy. It's a vicious circle. Any ideas? Okay. So, Jane Marie, been asked about this question a lot, and there's no denying there are others here in the chat I'm not going to name but I know them, whose chronic dizziness started with BPPV. And there is no denying that for some people that experience is traumatic. However, in this case, what I want you to think of is the chronic dizziness being post-traumatic symptoms. So you had a traumatic experience of BPPV. I mean, it was really scary. You ended up with post-traumatic symptoms. Who does that happen to? It happens to people whose nervous systems were already vulnerable when they had their first attack. So it doesn't just happen to everyday Joe. And some of the factors that lead your nervous system to be hyper alert or hypersensitive when the BPPV first strikes are things like stress, are things like internal stress, like being the kind of person who puts a lot of stress on yourself, like having a history of childhood trauma or recent trauma or medical trauma. Again, and a lot of other things that I've mentioned previously in this Q&A, but all of those things, and this is, by the way, not just my fabrication. The research on post-traumatic stress disorder shows that certain people are more vulnerable to developing post-traumatic symptoms. So if we think of chronic dizziness for some people, not for everyone, but for some people as a post-traumatic symptom complex, I think that's perfectly fair to think of it that way. But there's a reason why you were vulnerable to having post traumatic symptoms from BPPV. And the reason I say this, Jane Marie, is that when I was working clinically as kind of a regular audiologist, I saw hundreds, if not thousands, of people with BPPV, and they were fine. I know that that may be crazy, and I'm not, no one likes vertigo. Okay. I just want to be clear. No one came into my office and was like, yippee, I've got vertigo. No, but they would come in, they'd be super uncomfortable. They'd be scared. I'd do the epley on them or whatever maneuver I needed to do for them, and they'd leave, and that would be it. Or they'd have to come back a couple times. Sometimes, as you have, some of you have experienced, it takes them a few times to clear the crystals, right? Then they would just go on their merry way and they'd be okay. So when I see someone who develops chronic symptoms from BPPV, I'm always asking myself, why was that person's nervous system vulnerable to that happening in the first place? And it's not a sign of weakness at all. A lot of these circumstances are out of people's control, but some of these other factors, even just not having a good support system, even having kind of a hostile relationship, even like small, not small, even good life events can lead your nervous system to be really sensitive to these kinds of things happening. And that's why, again, I've talked about this in the Q&A already. I recommend so often that people don't just do exposure and nervous system calming and somatic tracking, although those are awesome tools. We also want to understand the context that sets you up for chronic symptoms because that's the way out of them. We're not going to just turn your nervous system off like a switch. We have to understand why your nervous system is in the state in the first place. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Wonderful. Yeah, I see that. Yeah, so Karis is saying, so I'm glad you piped up, Karis. You're one of the people I was thinking about. I didn't want to call anyone out. Ariane had happened, and Michelle had happened too. So again, it is common. It does happen. There are others in the membership community whose onset was after BPPV for sure. Again, I'm not no question there, but when we look into it, there was a good reason why that person's nervous system was vulnerable to chronic symptoms. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Oh, that's so sweet of you. So Stephanie is saying she's starting to feel better. She's French. Unfortunately, in France, PPPD is not well diagnosed and known. Stephanie, I have some resources for you. So oop, there we go. My video went away for a second. So I have had several people who are French speaking pass through my community. Some of them are still there. So, of course, you're welcome to join if you'd like. There are other French speakers there. I need to start a French speaking group because there's enough of them now that, anyway. So, let me look this up for you. So, one of them recently graduated because he recovered fully and he posted the name of a psychotherapist who helped him get better. So, let me see if I can find her details. Just one second. I might not be able to find it quickly, but if I can, I'm going to give it to you. Okay, so let me see if I can find it. Okay. All right. Oh, there it is. Oh, I found it. Okay, I found it. So he said he posted here. Here. Okay. Okay, so her name, I'm just going to give you her name. Stephanie, if you will Google her name, it's Genevieve Chaussy, and I'm probably butchering her name. I'm so sorry. My American accent is not good with French. I put her name in the chat for you so that you can look it up. And Carl looks like he is also a French speaker. So Stephanie, if you look her up, she is she worked with someone with chronic dizziness, so I know that she knows what she's doing. So contact her, and her rates are very reasonable. She's a hypnotherapist. Okay. So yeah, so William is asking about yes, PPPD contacts for London. So for you, William, I would go to sirpa.org. So I put that in the chat as well. SIRPA.org. So William, I've said at the beginning of the Q&A, so you may not have heard, I'm going to be giving a talk to SIRPA in July. So SIRPA is the Stress Illness Recovery Practitioners Association. So it's people who do the same work that I do in the UK. Many of them are familiar with chronic pain. I'm going to be giving them a talk about chronic dizziness. So come July, many of them are going to know a lot of things about dizziness specifically, and they're going to be able to help you. So please look in their directory. There are many options there. Contact them and ask about their experience working with dizziness. Yes. And yes. And Mindy's asking, is the membership community Q&As like this one every week? Yes. We have a lot of fun. I know some of my community members, many of my community members have piped in here. We have a lot of fun. We have a lot of jokes, a lot of laughs. I get to know people because we have repeat offenders asking questions and making silly comments every week. And yeah, based on the membership community, again, it's a little easier for me to answer questions because I know more about the people I'm talking to. We do it every week, and the times change a little bit, but it's usually right around the middle of the day Eastern time. Once in a while, I'll do later afternoon like this, or I'll do morning to try to catch again my Australian and New Zealander crowd. Again, I'm really trying to try to accommodate more time zones. It's just so hard since I'm on Eastern time and I have children and, schedule stuff. So it can be very challenging, but I'm really trying to accommodate as many time zones as I can. But with the membership community, I record the live Q&As. People can ask questions in advance and I answer all of them. I answer all the questions every week, unless I miss one, and then I'll answer it the following week. And those are recorded so people can watch them anytime as well if they can't make it live. Yeah. Oh. Oh, that's so sweet. Yes. Okay. So I see Billie Jean is asking about trouble swallowing. Yes. In fact, I read recently somewhere, and I think it was somewhere reputable, so don't quote me on this, but that trouble swallowing was actually a primary symptom for people with PPPD at times. And that's, again, to me, Andy posted the link for Anxiety Center. And that is a primary symptom of, again, hypervigilance in the body or danger mode. Again, notice I'm not saying anxiety because I know anxiety has a psychological lean to it. And we're not talking about, oh, you're psychologically distressed. I'm talking about your body is in physical danger mode that can cause problem swallowing. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so, again, I'm sorry, Brian. I know I'd answered Mindy's question earlier. I'm not taking one-on-one clients right now. I have a group coaching program that's open, so people can join anytime. We meet on Zoom on Tuesdays at 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. Eastern time. Obviously, since it's a group setting, I don't get into a ton of detail on people's individual situations, but we talk. We I get to know everyone really, really well. We talk a lot about, again, these folks in the group tend to have a lot in common. They're working through a lot of the same issues, so it's really productive in many cases to work on them as a group. I also have other providers who I mentioned at the beginning of the Q&A who are taking individual clients, and I do take clients from my coaching group, but right now I'm completely booked solid, and I have a waiting list from the coaching group as well. So again, if you're interested in working with me, please consider the coaching group. And I know the group's not for everyone, so if the group is not an option, I'll have Dr. Leanne on very soon. You can send an email to us, Brian, at info@thesteadycoach.com, and Tara will get you hooked up with an appointment with Dr. Leanne when she's ready to take on clients. Yeah. So yeah, and Michelle's asking if hypnotherapy would work. Yeah. So Michelle, earlier in the Q&A, I'd mentioned to you actually that AEDP, IFS, somatic experiencing, EAET, a lot of these experiential methods are really helpful for people with chronic dizziness because it gets you out of your head and into kind of the parts of your psyche or your body that are causing the alarm or the danger mode to happen. So hypnotherapy can absolutely be effective with this as well. My issue is with with hypnotherapy, there seems to be a little less consistency in the quality of the work people are doing. And I'm not implying that a hypnotherapist is bad or good if you find a hypnotherapist, but some people seem really good at it, and some other people, they don't seem as good at it. So it's hard for me to, again, there's no like regulating or like I went to this program and this tells me I'm a good hypnotherapist type of stuff going on. So it's hard for me to recommend it specifically, but if you find someone who's a good hypnotherapist who can really get you to the emotional underpinnings of why your body's in this alarm mode, yes, it can be effective. Okay. Yeah. That's so awesome, Robert. I'm so happy to hear that. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Yes. Okay. You worked with a brain rehab specialist, followed the program, been getting so much better. Thank you. Yes, please email me. Again, I don't, unfortunately I can't respond to all emails anymore. Tara is the magician who responds to the emails, but all the success stories, I read every single one of them. So I am, there is no greater thanks that you can give me than sharing my channel with medical professionals, sharing my channel with other people who are suffering from chronic medically unexplained symptoms, including dizziness, but other symptoms as well, as you see here in the chat, and telling me your story when you recover. Like, if you do those things, you've given me more than I could possibly ask for. So, yeah. And yeah, so happy to answer this one. And I think after this, we'll close our Q&A. So, yes, we've answered so many questions today. And what a joy this has been. Again, I love seeing you all live, and many of you are people I've gotten to know a little bit in the comments. So it's really cool to get to see your faces pop up live with me. Special thrill. So, can you please comment on dizziness as a result of freeze mode? Yeah. So, I use the word fight or flight as a shortcut. When I say danger mode, I'm actually referring to fight, flight, and freeze. So, I'm referring to my body is not in a state of rest and relaxation. My body is in a state of action, or it's so threatened that it's in a state of freeze. So, that is included under the umbrella of what I call danger mode. So danger mode can include that impulse to fight, that impulse to run away, or just being totally frozen because you're completely overwhelmed. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, Brian. Okay. Brian, this is a great question. I'm naturally very skeptical. Who else here is a skeptic? I know some of you. I know some of you are skeptics. Who else is a skeptic? It sucks, but it convinces me that this won't work for me, or if it's not truly a good plan, it sucks. Any advice? So, Brian, I do have advice for you. Welcome the skeptic. Okay. So the thing that I find happening with people is they're trying to fight their skeptic because they're so desperate to get better. They're just like, okay, shut up, skeptic. Like, there's no room for doubts here. See if you can show yourself some compassion for having a skeptic. Okay. First of all, there's probably a great reason you developed a skeptic in the first place. It's probably done lots of great work for you throughout your life, right? So give it a thanks when it shows up and invite it in. So this is how I handle imposter syndrome, Brian. So for me, I'm here on YouTube talking publicly. No matter how many people I help, no matter how many times I do this, there is always going to be a part of me that shows up and is going to say, they're all going to realize that you don't know what you're talking about. Okay. That's going to happen. That's going to happen every time. But what I've learned over time is, rather than try to fight that and try to rationalize why I shouldn't, I invite it in. Before I start a Q&A like this, I invite my imposter syndrome part to come sit next to me. I let it know I'm here with it, that I get it, that I appreciate how it's trying to protect me, that I love it, that I love this part of myself. And that diffuses the whole situation. There is room for skepticism here, Brian. And I also want to say, I think Dr. Clark and I talked about this in the interview we did. So you can look on my channel for the interview with Dr. Clark. And if he didn't say it in the interview, he says it in his book. There is room for doubt. He says, all I'm asking from you is that you make some room for the idea. You be open to the idea that this is possibly a neural circuit problem and possibly reversible. That's a great place to start. And it will evolve from there. The more success stories you hear, the more books you read, the less you expose yourself to the negative media from big organizations, from physicians, from Facebook groups. Sorry to call out Facebook, but any social media groups, the less you expose yourself to those sources of information that are telling you that that she can't recover. And the more of this encouraging media you're taking in, and the more that you make space for your skeptic to be there, the better you're going to get. And it's okay for your skeptic to be here. Yes. Yes. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I see some skeptics here in the thread. Whoop. Oh, yes. Oh, skeptics. So many skeptics. Oh my gosh, you guys are amazing. Okay. Wonderful. All right. So guys, I'm just going to say hi, Andrea. Hi. Hi. Mwah. So Andrea is here and just putting your name up on the screen. I've had PPPD for 11 years and I'm finally getting better with Dr. Yo's words of wisdom. One day, Andrea, you will be on my channel, maybe if you allow me to. Um, and I want to say one other thing here. Yeah. Oh, you're so welcome, Laura. You're so welcome. And Deborah, you're so welcome. I wanted to say, so I want to answer Jane Marie's question. Yeah. So Jane, yes, she's asking if this will be on my channel to watch again. Absolutely. It will be. It will be available immediately after I end the stream. It will take some time for the subtitles to show up. I know that's very important for some of you. The auto translation will take some time. I'm big on that. There are people who watch my channel from all over the world, so that's super important to me. So that will all be on my channel. And then I will timestamp it at some point. So within the next, hopefully, few days to a week, I will also get it timestamped. So anyone who's watching it can go back and reference specific questions as well. So yes, it will continue to be on my channel for all time. So yes, you guys can all access it. Yes. So, yes, yes, you guys are so welcome. And Deborah is asking, I'd like to buy your workbook. Can I do it on a Kindle? So, Deborah, it's not available on Kindle. And the reason is because all the worksheets are available in the membership community in printable form. And I made the workbook because so many people had trouble with screens that I was like, okay, I need to make something physical. So I decided not to put it on Kindle. It's only available in a paper copy, but it's nice and it has like super big print and it's like lots of like big space. It's visually not awful for people with dizziness stuff. But if you really need something electronic or want something electronic, if you join the membership community, you can download all the worksheets from the Healing Chronic Dizziness course over on under the course. So in our membership community, I have the same exact, by the way, I just want to be clear. The free course is the same course I have in my membership community. It's not different. It's just that in the membership community, I also have the worksheets that accompany the course. So you can download them there if you'd like. You guys are awesome. Yes. Thank you so much. I know it is so amazing to have you all here celebrating this with me. Again, onward and upward. Please share this with everyone that you can who could help people with chronic dizziness. That is the goal, to get this word out to as many people as possible. And I'm just going to keep making videos and I'm going to keep giving you guys the information. And please keep commenting and asking questions and I will respond to them and I will make videos based on your questions. And if you're interested in doing this weekly, please consider joining the membership community because we do this live Q&A thing every week. Every week. All right. Thank you all so much. You are all amazing. And I can, again, just gratitude beyond words to all of you for being here with me. Seeing your comments, hearing your stories is what keeps me doing this. Getting the emails when people recover, getting the Instagram messages when people recover. I just had one the other day that I cry at least once a day when I read these stories. It's just unbelievable. This one was shared with permission. So Rose said, so shout out to Rose. Rose said, hang on. She says, I woke up with vertigo 8 months ago. It was life-altering dizziness for 6 months. I found your videos and I hooked up with a counselor from the therapist office you interviewed. It's been a long process with other intermittent symptoms, but last weekend was the first 2 days of zero dizziness I've had since. Long story. Your videos saved me. I have a 3-year-old and an 8-month-old when this happened and felt absolutely hopeless. I was in the worst headspace of my entire life, not even knowing if I was going to get better and be able to raise my kids. And finding your materials helped me feel a spark of hope and helped me find someone who was able to understand what I was going through, as no counselor or doctor was able to. So I get I get messages like that every day, so please keep them coming because they really keep me going. So if you like what I'm doing, please just keep telling me how you're doing, okay? Oh, no, well, Gwen, that's so sweet. That's so, so sweet. Yeah. Oh, and William, I'm so glad you did the notebook. Oh my gosh, I mean, the workbook, and you have it for extra notes. That's amazing. Oh, yes. Gwen is saying we should have been celebrating me. No, we should not. We are celebrating you guys because seriously, I I you yeah, all of this is you guys teach me so much. And again, I would not be doing any of this without all of you. For sure. Like 100%. Yes. All right. So folks, I think that this is a good place to end today. Thank you for joining me. I will see you soon. I promise there will be more public Q&As in the future. So keep on trucking. You can do this. I believe in you. You can get better. You can recover. Keep going. Keep talking to each other. I will see you soon. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so, so, so much. Bye, everyone. Bye. Thank you.